Welcome to the latest episode of The Independent. I'm Pete Sampson down in Fort Lauderdale. Matt Fortuna, my co-host in Chicago. And Matt, we're recording this 2 nights before the Orange Bowl. I think it would roughly be halftime, 48 hours from now. But we had a little bit of access today as Notre Dame arrived in South Florida. Both coordinators, 4 players, some Penn State access as well, Freeman and Franklin on Wednesday morning. And then that's it. Then it's the semifinals. And we talked a lot about some of the matchups on our previous show with our Penn State brethren in podcast arms. What still stands out to you about this game, and what's sort of most interesting about Thursday night?
Yeah, I think they're both very, very similar teams, and they both have injury concerns. Abdul Carter on Penn State side, Jeremiyah Love on Notre Dame side. Haven't gotten a whole lot of clarity on either end with that. I thought today Mike Denbrock just sounded like vintage Mike Denbrock. I think you tweeted the quote of, "Hey, how come no one wants to talk to us after our 90-yard passing performance?" But I think that's a good attitude to have, right? Like, he's not beating his guys into the ground over it. At this point of the year, it's find a way, whichever way. I mean, I distinctly remember Denbrock at one preseason media day after they hired Mike Sanford when he was the next big thing, and they came out together. And Mike's like, "All right," Mike Denbrock's like, "All right, everyone go see Sanford. I'll just sit here in the corner." But I think having a proven goods like that as your play caller and a guy who knows what it takes to win at this level at this time of the year means a lot. Because again, if you look at it on paper, you think Notre Dame's probably going to have to throw for more than 90 yards to win this or any playoff game, and yet
One would hope
they didn't. And I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they had a similar performance. I mean, are you going to get another 98-yard touchdown? Are you going to get another timely turnover just before the half, deep in your own in opponent territory? It's possible, but I do think, from Notre Dame's standpoint, for me, the biggest question mark or biggest thing I'm looking forward to seeing is, how does this offense evolve? And look, I think the team that won it all last year did it in a pretty vanilla manner offensively, without showing a whole lot. Now they had a first-round pick at quarterback and a lot of first or high-level draft picks on that offensive line at the skill positions as well. But I think at this point of the year, and I said this at the beginning of the year after the A&M game, I thought, why I was so bullish on this Notre Dame team was, I think culture is going to matter more than anything else when you're playing such a long season. Notre Dame's culture clearly is in a great place, especially when you see so many guys who have stuck with it and who are stepping up late in the season, making big plays. And I just think at this point, I mean, it's more than simply will, but I think knowing that you just got to find a way, regardless of how you got to do it, I think speaks very highly in Notre Dame's favor.
Yeah, I feel like you're saying you like the vibes on Notre Dame, which isn't. It's like that's a funny way to do analysis, but I agree with you. Like I just think like Notre Dame comes into this game having slayed their dragon. Like they feel great about themselves. Penn State, I feel like, almost will automatically be somewhat tight in this game because it's the kind of game that they've struggled with. I think that James Franklin is 2-16 as an underdog. Is that right? I realize most of
it's not good. I don't know what the exact stat is.
I realize most of that is Ohio State and Michigan. And like, as you've, I think, written on the Inside Zone, like it's Penn State. Like you're behind those two schools in sort of the prestige rankings, to put it in video game terms. And that's fine. You should win more than you have, but you're not supposed to be 500 in those games. So I'm very interested to sort of see how Penn State comes out in this game from a sort of mindset. Do they attack Notre Dame? Do they try to get Drew Allar pushing the ball vertically against Notre Dame's man-to-man defense? I think that it's kind of a fool's errand to read too much into quotes from players at media availability, but I thought it was interesting when Xavier Watts came in today and he was sort of asked a little bit about Drew Allar and was just like, like, we're good. Like, we'll give him some stuff. Like, there just was, it's like when you talk about Tyler Warren, it's like you're genuflecting on like the best tight end in America. When you're talking about the quarterback, it's like, we've seen some stuff on tape that makes us believe we're going to we're going to be able to sort of make him struggle, make him uncomfortable on Thursday night. To me, that's the biggest key to Notre Dame winning. It's less about how well Riley Leonard plays in the pass game. It's more about how poorly or how average they can make Drew Allar look.
Yeah, it's funny. I think both teams have changed and evolved a lot over the course of the season. Obviously, Notre Dame for obvious reasons, but even Penn State's. I thought there was a point in the season where their offense was just feed Tyler Allen the football, or excuse me, Tyler Warren the football, however you can. And I thought Ohio State, which talent for talent is probably the best defense in the country, did a really good job of, for the most part, neutralizing him. And Penn State did not have anything else offensively at that point in time to make the defense pay. Whereas, look, we can knock competition. They're playoff teams, Boise State, SMU, and obviously Oregon in the Big Ten title game. Penn State's run game has really taken off. Drew Allar, I think, and he's such a divisive prospect, I think, among NFL scouts, among us in the media. I thought last year as a redshirt freshman, they did everything they could to protect him and not put him in vulnerable situations. He never really got a chance to take off. The offensive line wasn't great. The receivers were terrible. The OC ends up getting fired. And at the end of the year, they're all pointing to his TD to INT ratio, which was like 21-1 or something crazy. But it's like, if you watch him play, like, you really weren't that impressed. Whereas this year, the numbers aren't great. He's definitely thrown his fair share of picks, but it does seem like he's got a little bit of that dog in him, to borrow a cliche, where that Oregon game, like, he kind of single-handedly kept them in it, brought him back.
I liked him.
The USC game, he threw 3 picks, but he led them on a game-tying drive where he completed 2 fourth-down conversion passes to Julian Fleming, who they brought in thinking he'd be this great receiver and really hasn't, but he's been really a good locker room guy who's stepped up and made the big plays when necessary. So I think Allar has grown and evolved a lot. I wonder if those receivers have grown enough around him to really maybe think Andy Kotelnicki could try to open things up a little bit and maybe try to get Notre Dame off its skis a little bit and try to get them in a track meet. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I do wonder, given how creative Kotelnicki's been all year long, is that something he wants to try? Because, I mean, you mentioned on the last show, Notre Dame hasn't faced a whole lot of starting quarterbacks this year, and their offense is outside of the USC game. And let's face it, USC's defense is not Penn State's or really anyone's that you're going to see in this playoff. Has not been in a position where they've got to score every time they have the ball.
Now, here's the quote from Watts. He's definitely an experienced quarterback. He makes some good plays, but at the same time, I think we can mess with any quarterback. Our defense, the way we challenge people, there's not a lot of teams on film that challenge people the way we do. Like, that's, I mean, Notre Dame has earned the right to
spoken like a 2-time All-American.
Yeah. It's they've earned the right to be incredibly confident on that side of the ball. And I do think, like, if they win on Thursday night, defense is going to be the story of the game, and offense needs to be along for the ride. And you can figure out something on special teams to steal a possession here or there. Like, that probably is going to be enough. I do think, like, the Tyler Warren part, I think he had, like, finished the year with 63 first downs. For comparison's sake, Michael Mayer had 44 as a junior. I mean, he is an incredible fulcrum for their offense. And, like, Notre Dame has not played anybody like him. I feel like Notre Dame will be fine with him moving around unless they figure out a way to get him matched up on sort of like non-Jack Kaiser linebackers. That is, I think, kind of an interesting subplot to this game in terms of schematics of it. But, I mean, what Warren has done in terms of moving the chains and making spectacular plays is that I'm very interested to sort of see that on Thursday night.
Yeah, just, as a tight end, obviously he's a great pass catcher. How's Penn State going to play him? He's snapped the ball at times. He's thrown the ball at times. He's obviously taken direct snaps and run it at times. He's pretty much played every position on offense. And I just think as long as he's on the field, you got to find a way to account for him. And that's ultimately, when you look at Penn State's big loss this year, the Ohio State one, he had a long play to get them into a 1st and goal situation, and then they completely went away from him on 4 straight plays at the goal line. You just got to find a way to get him involved, to draw that defense's attention. So, different kind of matchup, certainly, than I think really anyone's faced this year defensively. Be interesting to see how Penn State deploys him. And then, I think you touched on this a little bit, but I don't think either team's going to score a whole lot of points. I think both defenses are too good. I think both offenses have their limitations. I trust Notre Dame to screw up less, if that makes sense. Like they're
Yeah.
just so good in turnover margin. They're so good at protecting the football. They're not going to beat themselves. Even, you could break that Georgia game down a million different ways. Even at the end of the game, I mean, how long was that drive where they ran the fake punt?
It was
They didn't get
12
anything
plays.
out of it, but they
Yeah, it was
killed the
12
game.
plays for 41 yards, and it was like perfection.
Exactly. And that matters in games like this. I mean, it just, have you been watching Hard Knocks the in season?
I have not, no.
There was, I think it was early on, there was a Steelers Browns game, and Mike Tomlin's got his captains in the room previewing the game, and they just lost them and they're playing them again. And he says something effective like, guys, this could be one of those games where you're going to get up early and you're going to think we got to win by this much. I got to get this many. He's like, get all that out of your mind right now. It's the NFL. Just win the freaking game. Like, he's like, I know it's hard to think that way, but just get all that out of your mind. And I've never heard it like articulated like that from a head coach like that. But I feel like that's kind of the mindset Notre Dame's in. I'm like, yeah, we threw for 90 yards. So what? We beat the crap out of Georgia. Like, it takes what it takes at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there are times. Look, we've covered Notre Dame offensive coordinators who would be defensive in that situation. Denbrock is not one of them. But I think that it sort of goes back to like the head coach on down. It feels like a program that's like very comfortable in its own skin. I think that shows in terms of how aggressive they are. I've talked and written a lot about the fourth down calls, the fakes, the almost excessively playing man-to-man defense. Like, Notre Dame knows who it is. And like, there was one thing I wanted to ask Denbrock about today that I didn't. Maybe if Notre Dame wins and we do even more media in Atlanta, I will. Like, the concept of calling the game you have to call, not the game you want to call as an offense coordinator. I think that there's a lot of coordinators out there that sort of get tripped up in their own call sheets. I think Denbrock does a pretty good job of not doing that. But still, it was interesting to talk to Denbrock today because he talked about how, he said he was asked a little bit about the last game performance, and he said some of it's on me. I got to cut loose and let these guys play a football a little bit too. I don't know if you do. Like, I think you just keep doing. You
might have to at some point, but I wouldn't like.
Yeah, you might have to, but I wouldn't volunteer that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I'm sure you heard this story or some version of it. The 2014 Northwestern game that they blew. I remember in real time or after the game, someone on staff tells me we had our game plan Thursday. Brian Kelly comes in and goes, "Of course we could beat these guys around the football, but that's not what we do. We're a passing team." And he completely threw the game plan out, and we all saw what happened in that game. They completely blew it against a not great Northwestern team. Like, there's none of that anymore. There's definitely none of that at this point in the season. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Like, I think the rarest thing in college football right now is to have a true difference maker on the sideline in game. We've seen it with Nick Saban, obviously, in the past. I think we've seen it with Kirby Smart during some of their championship runs. I feel like we're seeing that with Marcus Freeman and his coordinators right now. Indiana, they're going to win no matter what, but even the way they kind of got in their heads at the end there, and then certainly with the calls they made, and particularly with that fake punt that wasn't against Georgia. They just, what would Freeman say? We practiced that so much that we couldn't screw it up. Like,
yeah,
they feel very, very confident right now.
And they still almost screwed it up. I asked Jadarian Price during the week, like, so.
Well, I mean, they should have been called for.
Did you move early? And he's like, I don't know. Next question. Like, he had a sense of humor about it.
But like,
it was
that wouldn't have affected.
it
would have affected the game. They wouldn't have lost the game.
Yeah, it really, it didn't impact the outcome all that much. Like, I think Notre Dame still wins that game going away. But one thing that I'm interested in your feeling on this, like, do you think there's a chance Notre Dame is out of gas and we see that Thursday?
I think it's possible, just in the sense of, like, it kind of defies logic that they've played this well defensively with the guys they're turning to at this point and with the number of snaps they're asking these guys to play. And this is game, 15 now? I think it's possible. I don't expect that to be the case, but I mean, it's crossed my mind. The other part, and I'll say this to be the fun place, of the 4 teams that won quarterfinals, I didn't see anyone giving their coach a Gatorade bath other than Notre Dame. Like, I know it was a cathartic win as far as, like, we finally won a major bowl game,
Yeah.
And I don't think this is a group that's going to get ahead of themselves like that. But it was also like you look back and you're like, okay, like Ohio State just avenged their biggest loss of the year in dominant fashion. They don't care. Like it was just interesting
because they knew the game was over at the end of the first quarter.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I think that the grind of the season, the number of injuries Notre Dame has had, on Jeremiyah Love, I don't expect him to play or I expect him to be incredibly limited on Thursday night.
That's huge though. Like when you look at the way this offense runs, I mean, Penn State's offense that will take the field Thursday is not the Georgia offense that took the field with Gunnar Stockton. No. Like you're going to have to do more offensively than you did last game if you're Notre Dame. It's going to be harder to do that without a healthy Jeremiyah Love. And Penn State's run defense is really good. I mean, Ashton Genty's the best running back in the country. I didn't think Boise State as a team was all that good, so I wouldn't read too much into that game. But Penn State knew, like, as long as we contain Genty, it doesn't matter. I mean, Maddox threw how many interceptions that game? Like, Boise State was overwhelmed. It's not going to obviously be like that. But I do think if Penn State sells out to stop the run, I think they can stop the run. And it's going to be on Riley Leonard to make them pay.
Yeah, and to Riley Leonard's credit, I mean, Riley Leonard may make him pay with his legs. Like, if they sell out to stop Jadarian Price, like Riley Leonard can still run the ball. I do think I probably have said this on previous shows and it hasn't happened, but there was a play against USC where Riley Leonard faked, probably did Jadarian Price, and then rolled out of the pocket, and instead of taking off, hit Chris Mitchell like down the seam for 15, 20-yard gain. Those kind of plays like that feel a little bit off script to me, like he's going to have to create some of those. Like I don't need to see Riley Leonard try to prove anything as a pocket passer on Thursday night. He is what he is there. But I think outside the pocket, when he sort of has the whole field to scan, I think that could be potentially impactful. And then, like, how does Penn State defend Riley Leonard, the scrambler? Like, do they use Abdul Carter in a spy capacity, which they have against previous opponents? Yeah. So you do that. It's one of the few times where I would put Riley Leonard at an athletic disadvantage over the guy, he's trying to get by. I guess we'll see what happens, but I wonder how Notre Dame tries to make that work in their favor. And I ask that in the sense of, like, if you take Abdul Carter and then make him stand still for the first 4 seconds of every play, in theory, like, that should create an advantage for you that you can take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, yeah. I mean, I've seen some all-22 film
Great theory.
where they've used that, and I think depending on how healthy or not healthy he is, they'll probably put him at a linebacker spot more than at the traditional DN spot where he's just banging his head against a tackle the whole time. But I think Carter athletically is an absolute freak. And again, I don't know the full status he'll be in. I expect him to play. I'd be shocked if he didn't. And if he's on the field, he'll be making plays. I mean, he gets held a lot. We saw that in the Oregon game. I just think Notre Dame's going to have to make plays at some point in the passing game that they didn't. And if they don't, they're going to have to not turn the football over, which I have faith in them to not do.
Yeah, I don't think they'll turn the ball over. I don't think Penn State will score a lot. It just is, it's one of those things where, like, Notre Dame has been going full throttle for so long. I feel like Penn State played Indiana twice in Boise State and SMU. Like, Notre Dame expended a ton of energy against Georgia. And you're right, being down on the field after that game, it felt like something had been accomplished, as much as, Marcus Freeman may try to make it seem like, okay, we're still moving forward. This isn't our ultimate goal. And that's fine. But what they accomplished was 31 years in the making. Like, I don't know how you could not fall into that trap at least a little bit.
No, and Georgia, at least defensively, their personnel is what it is. Like, they're a better, more talented football team based on recruiting rankings and draft picks than Notre Dame was, and didn't look that part. And I don't think it was just because they had a backup quarterback either. Like, Stockton wasn't great, but he didn't lose them that game, I don't think. Notre Dame played better on all three sides of the ball. Penn State is good on special teams this year. They've hired Justin Lustig in the offseason. He was Clark Lee's guy at Vanderbilt the year before. They've been very aggressive as well with fakes and whatnot. So I don't think it's I don't think they'll be caught off guard if number 26 is a holder and it happens to be Tyler Buckner. A
Those
former
freaking nameplates on the jersey.
yeah, the
They just give
nameplates
it
are on there
away.
now, and you might actually be able to read them since I assume Notre Dame's wearing their white jerseys.
Yeah. How does that? Because I think Penn State has been tweeting out like whiteout energy. Can they ask to wear white and then Notre Dame wears blue?
I think the higher seed, the better seed gets the choice.
Yeah.
But everything I've seen has been blue so far, at least in like the
Yeah, I mean,
social
just all
media
the
graphics.
signage at the hotel has them in white, but like, who knows? That's a sign that was made 2 weeks in advance. So
They thought they were
Who
playing
the heck-
Georgia.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they thought they were going to be the lower seed, and they're like, oh crap, get me some Notre Dame signage.
You know what's interesting? Tim Murray, our friend, had put this out on social media midseason, and it's actually grown even more. The stat has aged well. For all the crap Marcus Freeman takes for the games they've lost that they shouldn't, for all the crap James Franklin takes about big game James and not win the big one, since Marcus Freeman took over 2022, the two best teams against the spread over the last 3 years, Notre Dame and Penn State.
Oh,
And it's a great like snapshot of like perception not being
Perception.
reality, right? Like,
yeah,
there's a reason there are all those big casinos in Penn State. It's because all of us idiots are saying these guys don't know what they're doing on the sideline when more often than not they're making money.
yeah. No, that's interesting because you would have thought Penn State was terrible against the spread based on how Franklin's perceived, when really it comes down to like how you perform as an underdog, right? I mean, I think that's.
If you've seen some of these Penn State games, Franklin knows. Like, oh, you're going for 2 now, really?
I do wonder, like, if you get into a situation on Thursday night where, like, does Freeman the answer is probably not, but like, does Freeman almost push the envelope a little bit more to like try to rattle Franklin's cage?
He's done it the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he did it with Cignetti with the fake that it ultimately got run and got stopped, but Cignetti called a timeout, and then the fake punt, non-fake punt. I mean, I could definitely see Freeman trying to like mess with Franklin a little bit, and I could see Franklin being ripe to be messed with.
I could see that. I mean, it's in keeping with what we've seen from Notre Dame the last 2 weeks. I mean, it just rarely do you see these mind games or coaches get in others' head from a purely schematic standpoint. We saw Brett Bielema get in Shane Beamer's head last week in a much more defiant pose. But no, I mean, Notre Dame has had difference makers on the sideline in this postseason. It wouldn't matter against Indiana. They're going to win that game no matter what. But the way, I mean, the middle eight, right? It sounds so cliche. Notre Dame is outscoring opponents 145-10 this year.
Yeah.
And you see that stat, and you know how much they like to kick it off. I believe they're just 6-8 on the coin toss this year. So it's not like they've been in the most advantageous position to capitalize off the middle eight, from a strictly like we're getting the ball back standpoint. They've just absolutely dominated there. And that was another part where I don't know how many times I've turned to you or anyone else I've been in a press box with over the last 3 years. And I'm just like, we're all looking at each other like, why is Freeman to call him timeout now? What's with the clock management here? And this year it's like, whoa, genius.
Yeah. The first couple of years you're like, ooh, like this. I don't know. Maybe the hiring of a director of analytics has been proven to be a master stroke. Where at the time we're like, do you really need that? Well, it's working out quite nicely. Like it is yet another one of the like pulling the right levers at the right time that Freeman has done this year. It's like, I think you would have a hard time coming up with Northern Illinois side. Like, where has he like botched something this year badly? I don't know. Like USC, I don't really know what I don't know what the sort of countermeasure there from playing an option team in New York and a pass first team in LA 1 week later is, if you're Notre Dame. But I mean, how many times and obviously we've been doing this podcast in a few different formats, but like how many times over the years have we written or talked about like all the impediments for Notre Dame, whether like final exams or academics in recruiting or transfers? Like, I just feel like he's blowing away so many of the excuses that have stacked up year over year over year. And it's like, I feel like I'm watching Notre Dame football, like sort of just be free and go for it now in a way that I don't remember ever watching.
How many times, I mean, you said, and this is more on the coach and the administration, although I think there's a cause and effect there. God, will these guys just stop making excuses? And like, can we get not saying, I wasn't pushing Kelly out the door because I think he did a great job, but like, God, imagine like if someone came in who did all this, but also actually liked recruiting. Or imagine if like they had the administration that like wasn't apologetic about wanting to be good at football. Yeah. And literally the first year of a new AD and with this coach, they're 2 games away from possibly winning the whole damn thing. And they're not apologizing for it. They're paying market value. It's like, yeah, like
for coaches and players.
You can win. I mean, Chuck Martin said to you on the pod earlier this year, like, and granted it was a different time, but like, he's like, I could never get over the whole like, oh, you can't win at Notre Dame anymore. Like BS. Like, yes, you can. Like, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Like you can, absolutely can. And probably even more so in the NIL era.
Yeah, that's true. I think
less
the NIL
swayed by facilities and slides and waterfalls than they are what you can do for them after football.
Yeah, I mean, I think the NIL portal era in particular, like we had a listener of the show reach out to me and is like, he was like, I disagreed with what you said about how Notre Dame has hit at a higher rate in the transfer portal than they do in recruiting. This is obviously before the Georgia game, but I think they do an incredible job of roster management in the portal. Like recruiting is fine. Like they do a good job, but I think what they're doing in the portal right now with, Jaden Harrison and RJ Oben as being like difference-making players when you need them against
when we
Georgia. Yeah, I think that's incredible, and they've done a really nice job of that. And that's it showed up against Georgia. They'll probably need it to show up on Thursday night against Penn State too. But I mean, it's like what Penn State had, Dante Cephas a couple years ago. Like Notre Dame really liked him in the portal, and he didn't do anything. Julian Fleming not really doing anything. And I get it. Notre Dame's wide receiver statistics are not great. Like you can point out Chris Mitchell and Bo Collins and Jaden Harrison and say like, oh, well, look at their catches, yards, and touchdowns. But, Bo Collins scored against Georgia. Jaden Harrison scored against Georgia. That kind of like closes the book on that.
Yeah. And, one other part with that, I threw this out there, including someone at Notre Dame who shot it down, but someone's going to do this at some point. It's now a 2-semester sport. Classes start next Monday at Notre Dame. If they're in the national championship, they'll be playing a game in the second semester. I believe they did this with Olivia Miles. What's stopping Notre Dame or anyone playing in the second semester from filing an injunction against the NCAA to get their early enrollees eligible for that game? What's the worst? I mean, the worst they could say is no. Now you're not going to play them and risk ineligibility and vacating games. Yeah. But with the NCAA's track record in court right now, someone's going to do that eventually. And if I were Ohio State, I'd do it now because I believe they already started classes and their only team. They probably have the best early enrollees based on the recruiting. And like of the 4 teams, they could probably take the best advantage of it. And they're the only one of the 4 that I believe is in class right now. I think you're going to see that at some point. Someone challenge it.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's as Riley Leonard said today, Notre Dame school is outrageous in a good way. We all love going to class. So it's like if you're going to class in Notre Dame, maybe you should have some benefit of playing in the games. Like you're right. Like the NCAA, it's like their track record right now. It's like if you want to do something, file an injunction. You can probably do it.
Do it with your state, like Ohio. Just do it right now, right before a game, and you'll be the only one who others will eventually follow. I'm not a legal expert, but I just, did you have Diego Pavia from New Mexico State and Vanderbilt on your bingo card as being the guy to kill the JUCO eligibility role this year? No, like shoot your shot with these guys at this point. They're not going to. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. Well, before we get into picks, some business to take care of. Rhoback.com, proud sponsor of The Independent. You can go to Rhoback.com for all your needs for polos, quarter zips, joggers, vests, hats, shorts, tees. Probably missing some other ones. I think there's some bandanas for your dogs as well. But you can go to Rhoback.com, use promo code IRISH for 20% off your first order. That's Rhoback.com. 20% off your first order.
I'd like to also thank our partners at Obvious Shirts. Go to obviousshirts.com, get some great independent merchandise, quarter zips, crew necks, hoodies, t-shirts, some of your favorite sayings from both us and players and coaches, go to obviousshirts.com and search the independent collection. Thanks to them for being such great partners.
And our last sponsor, Future Fans. If you want to experience the playoffs with your kids and make sure that they are ready to experience the magic, check out Future Fans for an activity box to help your kids ages 4 to 8 learn the sport of football. Beanbag toss game that has things like 4 tries and 6 points embedded into it, and then later a storybook that connects football. It's genius for kids who want to learn about football and parents who want to teach their kids about it. You can go to futurefans.com and use the promo code Irish for 15% off your first order. That's futurefans.com. You get the football activity box and 15% off your first order with the promo code Irish.
Predictions?
Okay, so this is really counterintuitive. I feel like I liked Notre Dame more against Georgia than I do against Penn State. I am very concerned about Notre Dame from the out of gas point of view. And just like at some point you don't have it. It wouldn't blow me away if this was the point where like 15 games, 5 season-ending injuries on defense showed up. Yeah, that showed up on Wednesday night or Thursday night. I can't keep the days right. And that Penn State just they scored early. Maybe it's 14-7 at the half, and Notre Dame feels like kind of some game pressure in a way that they haven't all season. I just have a very difficult time believing that Drew Allar is going to be the quarterback that picks Notre Dame apart. Even though like he's 10th in the country in pass efficiency, he played great against Oregon. That was sort of the game I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Like this is the guy. But they did that one time, and I feel like the more likely outcome is Notre Dame's defense makes Drew Allar very uncomfortable. He makes a big mistake, if not 2 big mistakes, and Notre Dame marches on to Atlanta. So I'm going to go Notre Dame 28-20 over Penn State. I'm not super confident in it. I picked Notre Dame to beat Georgia. In some ways, even though the spread of that pick was a lot less than this one, in a very weird, convoluted way, which might have something to say about my fatigue after 15 games of the season. I'm going with Notre Dame 28-20 over Penn State on Thursday night. What do you got?
A lot of points. My counter to that would be, and not to dismiss it because I think it's valid, they did not play the toughest schedule. And I think that matters. They played one less game than Penn State too. Penn State played in the Big Ten title game, but again, they're healthier than Notre Dame is coming into this game. It's funny, if you look on paper, Notre Dame's rush defense is 34th, and you think, that doesn't look right. And then you realize they played Army and Navy, and those were the 2 biggest rushing games they gave up. So it's a better rush defense, obviously, than the statistics would show. Look, I think these teams are very, very similar. I think they're very evenly matched. I think they've both hit their stride at the right time. I think both have probably earned reps coming into the season of playing too tight in big games, and both, I think, have kind of cut loose for the better. I look at that Georgia game, and I think the way, and not just the Georgia game, but in particular when you're playing a team that's more talented than you are, the way they're able to steal possessions and get in the other sideline's head, and at the very least not lose the turnover battle. I just think the game swings on something like that, whether it's, I can't put my finger on it because I think Penn State's good on special teams. I don't think they're going to be fooled by an onside kick or a fake punt or something like that. But whether it's an Allar pick or just Riley Leonard simply not giving the ball up, I think Notre Dame wins this one 20-17. There's been a lot of line movement on this game. Notre Dame was 2.5-point favorites last night when we recorded. They're down between 1 and 1.5 now. Over-unders between 44.5 and 45.5. If you're in Vegas, my advice to you, the opposite of Pete, would be to bet the under because I just don't think there's going to be a whole lot of points scored in this game. But I think Notre Dame's intangibles eke them by. And I want to say for the record, because at some point, whether it's this year or years from now, a game's going to come down to this, a playoff game. For the love of God, do not go to overtime and triple overtime. And I do not want to see a championship decided by a 2-point conversion off. That's not football. I hope it doesn't come. I hope it's a close game. I hope it's a great game. Hope it comes down to the end. I hope it does not get to third overtime.
It's like you want to have a soccer discussion about penalty kicks or something.
It's
man.
like literally the equivalent of it, right? I would think. Like, and that's
no, it's bad.
Like
it's bad. I hope that if Notre Dame gets in that position, they go for 2.
Well, both should do that. I mean, what was the game? What bowl game happened? Pat Narduzzi, of course, against Toledo, where he didn't go for it. And I had a former coach text me mid-game. He goes, he didn't not go for it because he doesn't know the rules. He did not go for it because he didn't want to become the GOAT when the play didn't work, and they blame him for losing. And that's another part where, like, I don't think he's unique in that regard. I think coaches get in their own heads way too much in situational football like that. And I also wonder, I mean, we've seen a couple of those, like Georgia Tech go 8 overtimes or whatever. Yeah. I was texting a former Notre Dame player during that game, and he's like, I know we didn't have those OT rules when I played there, but we had maybe 4 or 5 plays we'd run from the 3. How the hell are you supposed to do this 8 straight times? Like, you really think teams are practicing this? I don't. Like, it's I hate to say it's not real football because it's a game will eventually be decided by it, but I just hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. So we will be back, or I guess we'll see what we're doing post game. It's I don't know if we'll go immediately live after the Orange Bowl wraps up, do some other work commitments, but there definitely will be a post game wrap up show at some point on the Independent, following Notre Dame, Penn State at Miami Gardens. And we didn't even get into like the Notre Dame House of Horrors element of
first game next year too.
Hard Rock Cafe. Oh my goodness, yeah, you've got Alabama 2012, which, based on my proclivities down here, feels a long way away from where we are
tonight.
Right now.
It was January 7th.
Oh yeah, that's I think you referenced Bob Diaco being like, "Is this a stadium?" Yep, that's the stadium, Bob.
Was it 12 years ago?
Yeah, that's Notre Dame's come a long way. They had the Miami game in 2017 as well, and then you got Thursday night. So not quite the demons of a 31-year major bowl streak, but something to get over to that you don't have to worry about coming down here against the Hurricanes in August. Which, good God, I cannot believe the football season will be here that quickly after how long this one's gone on. So until Thursday night, he's Matt. I'm Pete. Thanks for being with us on this latest episode of The Independent.